Hi, I'm Mike Woods, Director of the Special Friends Ministry at First Baptist Orlando, and I'm also a parent to two boys who are on the severe end of the autism spectrum. And so I come to you today as somebody who doesn't just talk the talk, but also walks the walk. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit today about your words. I want to share a personal story with you. I remember standing in my kitchen, staring at the garbage can. It was full. In fact, tinfoil was sticking out from the little hinged opening, and it was so packed that you couldn't have squeezed in a soda can, a crushed soda can, much less even a paper napkin. How many times, I thought to myself, have I told him to take out the garbage when it was full? 100, 200, felt like 1,000. And I could feel my body tighten, could feel my teeth clench. And I hollered to my son upstairs, "John, get down here now!" And I could hear his feet thudding, hitting the floor. He was moving pretty quickly. And in a few seconds, he stood there in our kitchen, wide-eyed. He knew that something was up. I'd been a U.S. Marine for 20 years, so I'd learned how to say something like I meant it. My voice was loud, angry. "How many times have I told you to take out the garbage when it's full? When are you going to start to realize and to be able to do things on your own that when the garbage is full, you have to take it out?" You know what? I feel like I'm parenting a first grader. So you know what? I'm going to start treating you like a first grader because you're about as irresponsible as one. Well, I could see him wince, and his shoulders dropped, and I could tell that the last words that I spoke hit home. I was in Marine mode now, and I was just about to fire another round of words when I heard it. "Do I speak to you when you mess up like that?" And even though there wasn't anybody in the kitchen and I didn't audibly hear those words, I knew who was speaking to me. "No, Lord, you don't. In the 100 or 200 or 1,000 times that you've messed up, do I talk to you like that? No, Lord, you don't. Haven't I always encouraged you to speak the truth in love? Yes, Lord, you have. Well, then here's another opportunity to do just that." You know, it was another moment in my life where I remembered the incredible power that words have to build our children up, especially when it comes to obtaining parental approval. A lot of you can probably remember a time in your life, probably a very specific time, and I hope multiple times that you can remember when your parents spoke to you words of encouragement. And for some of us out there, I know that we can remember our parents speaking words to us that weren't words of encouragement. In fact, there might even be times we can even remember what our parents were wearing when they said those words. It was that powerful. Have you ever caught yourself at the end of the day realizing that most of the words that you spoke to your child were negative or critical? I know that I have, and that occurred a lot when they were younger, actually. My boys are 15 now, but when they were 3, 4, 5 years old, I was so focused on the things that they couldn't do. Again, you know, two of my boys are on the severe end of the autism spectrum, and there were so many skill deficits. There were cognitive deficits, there were social deficits. Up until about the age of 4, my boys were nonverbal. So there were communication deficits. They didn't know how to play with toys appropriately. There were so many deficits, so many areas of their lives where they were behind. And my focus as a parent was totally honed in on what they weren't doing. And to follow then, so were my words. I often ended up speaking words of correction. "Stop. Don't do it like that. No, you don't do it that way. You do it this way. Hey, You've got to do that faster. That's too slow. Think about how many negative comments or words that your child hears in the course of a day, a week, a year, ultimately a lifetime. Teachers, therapists, friends, family members, and even sometimes us as parents often speak words of correction to our kids. Like you and I, these often well-meaning people end up becoming so focused on what our child isn't doing that they often speak words of correction, just like we do too if we're not careful. Our words are powerful, and the Bible is full of that message. And so what I would like to do is just to take the next couple of minutes to talk about and to listen to what God has to say about the power of our words. And in the process of doing that, to discover that what God has to say is just as applicable today to parents of children with special needs and to our life situations and concerning our words, since that's the topic of this presentation, as it's always been throughout the history of God's Word. So I would like to read from Proverbs 18:21, and it says this: "Life and death, blessing or curse, are in the power of the tongue." Life and death, blessing or curse, are in the power of the tongue. God's telling us in that verse that our words have an opportunity to give life to our children. But that verse also reminds us that our words can also bring death. Death to our child's self-esteem, death to our child's confidence, death to the parent-child relationship. But instead of taking time to dwell on that, let's take time to just talk about that word bless. The Bible reminds us that our words can be used to bless our child, and in the old Hebrew, the word for bless actually meant honor. And it comes from the idea of adding weight or value to somebody. You know, in the Old Testament times, in today's currency, when you pull out a coin, it has an inscription on it, usually tells you what the denominational value of the coin is, 5 cents, 10 cents, 25 cents. It has somebody's picture on it. But in the Old Testament times, the value of a coin wasn't determined by the inscription that was on it. Now, there might have been an inscription on the Old Testament coins and probably the picture of a ruler, whoever was ruling at the time. But the actual value of a coin back in those days was actually determined by its weight. And so you would put that coin on a scale. And the heavier that coin was, the more value, the more weight, the more value that coin had. And that's the concept behind this term blessing, or using our words to bless our child. Our words honor our child, they value our child because those types of words give weight to our kids and their value, and we honor them in that sense. And that's that concept of blessing in this verse that we do with our words. So when you bless your child with your words, you are adding value to your child. You're saying to your child that you are of such value to me. And you add weight. You give value to your child's self-esteem, your child's self-confidence, and you strengthen the parent-child relationship. So words of blessing might sound like, "I am so happy that you are my son. I'm so happy that you are my daughter. You know what? You are doing such a good job at," and then fill in the blank. Or, "I love you no matter what." Those are words of blessing. And those words focus on who your child is, not what he or she does. Those words of blessing, the words that you use to bless your child are not based on your child's performance. They're strictly based on your child's value as someone who's made in the image of God. Now in Proverbs 18:21, God also reminds us that our words can be used to curse our child. And that word curse meant something different then in the Hebrew than it does today. When we think of a curse word today, we're thinking of foul language. The Hebrew word for curse in that verse actually meant a trickle, like a trickle of water or a muddy stream. So think about the desert dwellers back in the Old Testament times. You know, they would walk for miles and miles in the hot sun to try to get to a life-giving stream, to get to water that would nourish them and strengthen them and give them life. Can you imagine what they might feel like after walking miles and miles in the hot sun to get to a life-giving stream? And when they get there, the only thing is a little trickle of muddy water. Why is that? Because upstream, somebody dammed that water up or blocked it, put an obstacle in the path so that life-giving waters couldn't flow to that particular point where that person was. That's what curse means. It's not what you say, it's the lack of saying anything, saying any words of blessing to your child. So again, curse doesn't mean cursing your child, it means the lack of saying positive things to your child, because when you don't do that, just like in my example of when I was talking about my boys when they were younger, my focus was so much on what they weren't doing that my words were words of correction. And because those were the only words that I spoke, it literally dammed up life-giving words, or words that could strengthen their self-esteem and their self-confidence in our parent-child relationship. You know, those words were prevented because of what I was focused on, and a lot of times what you focus on determines what words that you use. And anyhow, that's the thought behind the word curse in this verse. It's clamming up. It's not saying the things that you ought to be saying to your child, words of blessing. Now, in light of this, in light of God's truth, what does that mean that you should do? How does the truth of God's Word intersect with your life today? Well, I'm a lot better than I used to be at speaking words of blessing to my kids. I still have my moments, and that's the reason I shared that story with you about my 15-year-old. But I'm way, way, way better than I used to be. And why is that? Because when I came across this verse, I realized that my words weren't bringing life to my children. I wasn't blessing them with my words. I was cursing them. I was preventing life-giving words from getting to them. And so the first step simply is just simply to make a conscious decision to change. If you're in the habit of doing what I mentioned, cursing your kids by preventing giving life-giving words, perhaps because you're so busy in the course of a day that you forget to get around to it. Or in the moment you think about it, but you say, you know what, I'll do that later, and then you forget to get back to it. Or perhaps like myself, you're just so focused on all the things that aren't happening that your words tend to follow those thoughts. You need to make a conscious decision today to be consistent with the truth of God's Word and speaking words of blessing to your child. The second thing that I would encourage you to do is to be consistent about it. Research says that you basically have to do something for 30 days before it becomes a habit. So choose for the next 30 days to begin to speak words of blessing, to bless your child with your words. Now, the easiest way that I found to do that, well, here's the hardest way. The hardest way that I found to do that is by adding yet another thing to the plate of all the stuff that you have to do, to add another item to your to-do list. And you know why that doesn't work? Because as parents of children with special needs, we have a lot on our plate. There's work, there's school, there's bills, there's laundry, there's dinner, there's getting the car out to get the car fixed. There's the other siblings in the family and the activities that they're involved in. There is just so much to do that the thought of adding something extra to your plate is a lot. And sometimes it can tilt the scales to the point where it just feels overwhelming. Has anybody been there? I know that I have. So here's my thought. A better idea is to simply do this. Make the decision to start using words that will bless your child. What I want you to do is to think about a family routine, a routine that happens in your home, and preferably one that occurs on an everyday basis, all right? For example, in just about every home that I've ever known, to include my own, here's two routines that tend to always happen. Your kids wake up and your kids go to sleep, almost guaranteed. So think about choosing one of those routines. In my house, for example, I've chosen the routine of going to sleep, or what I would call bedtime, to use words that bless my kids. Now, there's a lot of other times during the course of the day I could do that, but between being at work for the better portion of a day, coming back and trying to get involved and getting them started on homework, and working on my relationship with my wife and trying to carve out time for that, sometimes if you're not careful, before you know it, you can realize you haven't spoke any words that bless your child. Now, obviously, you could speak those words any time of day, and we should be speaking those words any time of day. But my backup plan is this: at bedtime, that's an opportunity. It's a routine that occurs on a daily basis. In my house, I'm always involved in the bedtime routine. I have my child's full attention. All right, well, they're on the autism spectrum. Maybe I don't have their full attention. But what I'm saying is, it's one-on-one time with my son. He's there, I'm there, he's in bed, and this is a perfect moment for me to speak words of blessing, or to bless him with my words. And what better way to end the day than speaking words that bless your child? So again, it doesn't have to be that particular routine, because maybe in your home, that's a routine where speaking words that bless your child isn't going to be optimal. You might do it at morning time when they wake up. You might do it before you put them on the school bus. You might do it at dinner time, at the table. You might do it when you're transporting them from point A to point B in your vehicle, because that's something that you do every day. There's a routine that occurs in your house every day. Mark that routine as a time where you'll speak words that will bless your child. I want to thank you for taking the time today, the couple of minutes that it took to watch this presentation, to be the parent that you are, to think about how to draw to a closer relationship with God and put His Word to use in your life on a daily basis for yourself or as a parent with your child. And I just wanted to thank you very much for everything that you do as a parent to a child of special needs.